all doing well. We are starting with Maseches Kiddushin Daf Daled, about 6 lines down. Yesterday we learned a double din, that from the pasuk of Yatsa Chinam in Kosef, we learned that a woman, the money that she gets for Kiddushin goes to the father, and a couple of other dinim as well. So says the Gemara, how can you say that that's what the pasuk is being used for? After all, that pasuk is already being used for something else that's brought in the following brisa. Titania v'yatsa chinam elu yimei bagrus. When it says v'yatsa chinam, this is talking about a case of an ama ivriya, not related really to our sugya, but talking about her yimei bagrus, that she goes free when she's in yimei bagrus, which is older than 12. And ein kesef, that's the rest of the pasuk. V'yatsa chinam ein kesef elu yimei narus, so slightly younger years when she's 11, she also goes free during those years. We're going to ask the question of, if you go free with Na'arus, why do you need to have the pasuk talk about Bagrus? Because one's earlier than the other. We'll discuss that at some length today. But let us continue with the Gemara over here. The Gemara says, Amar Ravina im kain, if that's true, lemakra ein without a yud, it should see ein kasef without a yud. So says the Gemara, my ein kasef with a yud. It must be that we learn 2 things from this pasuk. In other words, the Gemara was bothered by the fact that the pasuk of Yatsa Chinam in Kasev was used already. If the pasuk of Yatsa Chinam in Kasev was used already for this Ama Ivriya sugya, how can we learn from here that a father gets the Kesef Kiddushin of the daughter? You can't learn 2 things from one pasuk. So the Gemara responds, don't worry, there's an extra letter Yud. And that's what the Gemara means over here. My ein Kesef la'adon zeh, aber yesh Kesef la'adon acher. That yes, in fact, it is the case that the father will get the money of the Kiddushin of his daughter. Umanihu, what is that case where the father does get the money? That's talking about the Av. Asks the Gemara, which really is a tangential question, brought only because of what was brought in the Gemara here. Umimayde darshinan hachi. How do we know that we can darshan the extra letter Yud in the word Ein? We know that every letter in the Torah was handcrafted literally and conceptually. How do we know we can darshan a Yud? Says the Gemara, it says v'zera ein la. This is talking about a case scenario of an eved who belongs to a kohen. So says the Gemara, the pasuk says v'zera ein la, that if she has no children, then she can still have truma. If they have children, she cannot have truma after the divorce. Says the Gemara, ein li ela zara. I only know that's if she has children. Zera zara. What about grandchildren? Let's say her children died and she has remaining grandchildren. So says the Gemara, Talmud lomar zera ein la. And the Gemara makes a fascinating drasha of ayin la. The word ain has an extra letter of yud. And what do we darshan from there? Ayin, you should look into this and see what's going on in her family. Ve'in li ela zera kasher. I only know these rules about the slave of the kohen in regards to zera kasher. If the kid is from a yid. Zera pasal minayin. How do we know about zera pasal? Talmud lomar says the Gemara, zera ain la, ayin la. Same drasha. So first of all, the Gemara is bothered. Use the same exact pasuk for 2 things. First, you use the pasuk of Zera Ein La to teach me about Zera Zara, and then you use it for Zera Kasher. So it says the Gemara, wait 1 second. Zera Zara. You can't. You literally just used it a line ago. So how could you say that the pasuk is to teach me about Zera Kasher versus Zera Pasal, and at the same time you're saying that it's for Zera Kasher? Says the Gemara, you're 100% right. 1/3 of the way down on Daled Mad Aleph, says the Gemara, Zera Zara, you're right. When it comes to the grandchild, lo itzrich kra, dibnei vanim harehein kivanim. That when we talk about grandchildren, this we know from other Maseches, this idea is mentioned in Yevamos, we've already learned this, that grandchildren have a similar din to that of a child itself. So we don't need the pasuk of the ayin with the yud, the ayin la, the aleph with the yud. We don't need the drasha for that. Ki itzrich kra. When do we darshan the yud? L'zera pasal. But what do we see from here? That the yud is something that we can darshan. And the Gemara adds, the Tana gufei minale de darshachi. How does that Tana know that we can darshan a yud? So says the Gemara, because Amrei Ksiv, it says in other places, me'ein bilam without a yud, u'me'ein yavami, without a yud again. Now, even though the words are different, but the Gemara is just showing it could have had a yud, and it doesn't have a yud. So by virtue of the fact that in some places the Torah says a word without a yud, and in some places it does, we therefore, by definition, can darshan the yud. It says the Gemara, the lo ksiv behu yud, v'hacha, in our case, ksiv behu yud, therefore, shma mina, that the extra letter of yud, but the extra letter of yud is l'drasha hu de'asa. We are able to learn from the extra letter yud. Therefore, because we have the extra letter yud in ein kasef, we therefore learn 2 dinim from the Gemara. We learn the din that we started with yesterday, that a father gets the Kiddushin, the kesef of her daughter through Kiddushin. And we learned the din of today about the case of Bagros and Narus. We'll dig into that a little bit more. We needed to teach the case of the father getting the daughter's Kiddushin. We also needed to teach the case that the Maaseh Adeh, that her proceeds, the money she makes, also goes to the father. Why do we need to do that? Because says the Gemara, if all that we had learned was about the Kiddushin, that the money goes to the father, so then Havamina Mishum de lo tarcha behu, because she didn't work on it. Aval Maaseh Adeh, where she did do the work herself, the katarcha behu, therefore Ema Dida Havu, I would have thought that the money, the proceeds go to her and not to the father. That's why we had to teach both cases. And Yashmin and Maaseh Adeh to commit I might have thought that the reason why her money that she makes, her proceeds go to the father is because the father feeds her. But I might have thought about Kiddushin, but Kiddushin, where the money comes from elsewhere, I might have thought that money goes only to her. Kamash Malan, that we need both cases to make sure that we know with clarity that when a father marries off a daughter and there's Kiddushin, the money goes to him. We're standing here right now at a chuppah. The Kiddushin that the husband gives to the wife, it belongs to the father of the bride. Kiddushin halachically, that's what the Gemara says. The ring belongs to her. The Maisa Kiddushin brings about a scenario, a chalos of Kiddushin, but the money is not hers. The money belongs to the father. I'm not going to go tell her that. It'll probably ruin the mood, but that is in fact the case. And then secondly, all of her Maisa Adeh also go to the father.
You're saying the ring really belongs to the father?
The value of the ring, yeah.
The $50.
Whatever it is. These rings, we bought, I bought one for my wife that was white gold. It was, I think, $45. Diamond ring was substantially more, and both of them were over budget. So whatever. All right, says the Gemara, 2/3 of the way down. Gufa, we just learned a line that we need to analyze. We had said Elu Yemei Bagrus. That part of the pasuk, this was the brisa that we used to question yesterday's assumption. So the brisa said that when it comes to Bagrus, she goes free. This Ama Ivriya, Bagrus is when she's past Bas Mitzvah, and Ein Kosef teaches us Elu Yemei Narus. So says the Gemara, like an obvious question. Why do we have to talk about both Narus and Bagrus? Narus hits before Bagrus. If Narus hits before Bagrus, she's going free anyways. So what's with the Bagrus? The Lichtov Rachmana Narus v'lo by Bagrus. The Torah has no extra words in it. So why is it that over here it teaches us both Narus and Bagrus? Yatzachinam teaches us Bagrus, and in Kosta that's extra. Just teach me the case of Narus, and I'll know if she's going free at 11. Pasha she'll be free by 12. So says the Gemara, no. Omar Rabba Bazeh v'limed al zeh. One is coming to teach about the other. And we have precedents for this kind of approach. Says the Gemara, a little bit more than 2/3 of the way down, just like a case scenario where there is someone who is subservient. He's either a toshav or a sachir. We'll define these people shortly. The Tanya, the Brisa writes, Toshav, when a person's working from you and he's a Toshav, so then this person is Zek Hanui Kinyan Olam. This person works for you forever. Remember the pasuk in Mishpatim, Baratza es Ozno Bamartzeva Avado Leolam. The Toshav is this guy. He is forever in servitude. The Sachir, in contrast, says the Gemara, Zek Hanui Kinyan Shan. He works for you for 6 years. He gets out by Yovel. So you have these two kinds of Jews. So it says the Gemara, maybe Yomar Toshav below Yomar Sachir. Maybe we only needed one. I only need to teach the case of Toshav who's permanent and not the case of Sachir who's temporary. Says the Gemara, Yomar, what might I have said? Toshav below Yomar Sachir, Ba'ani Yomer, what would I have said? Kanui Kinyan Olam. Eino Ochel, that the guy who's Kanui Kinyan, he's the one who cannot have food, he doesn't have any benefits. But Kanui Kinyan Shanim, Lo Kol Shekain, the guy with less years, of all the more so. So says the Gemara, that's not the case. Ilu Kain, Hayisi Omer, Toshav Zekinui Kinyan Shanim. If I only would have had the case of Toshav, I might have thought that the Toshav was actually the Sachir. I needed the Sachir to contrast and establish for me that the Toshav is the permanent and the Sachir is the temporary. Aval kanui kinyan olam ochel. I might have thought that. Therefore, basachar v'limit al toshav she'afal pisha kanui kinyan olam eino ochel. Therefore, we have the case of Sachir to teach me about Toshav. Same exact thing is true in regards to the Narus and the Bagrus. The Narus teaches me about the Bagrus. I might have thought Narus was a different time frame. Now I know Narus. I might have thought that Narus was a different time frame than Bagrus. They play off each other to contextualize one another, and therefore we know what the timing is of each of them. Says the Gemara, Amar le Abaye, These two cases are completely incomparable. In one case, we're talking about an Ama Ivria who's either a Nara or a Bogeres, one of the two. And in the other case, we're talking about two different people, a Toshav and a Sachir. They're different people. Says the Gemara, how can you bring precedence from this case of the Toshav and the Sachir? Hasam, in the case of Toshav and Sachir, Tre Gufein, that's literally two different people. Even if the Torah was explicit and wrote that the Toshav was the one who had the pierced ear, the Hadar Ksiv Idach, and had it been that we then would have identified explicitly the case of the Sachir who's temporary, have a Sachir Milsa Da'asi B'Kal V'chomer. I could have learned arguably from a Kal V'chomer, but that's okay. Milsa Da'asi B'Kal V'chomer, Tarch V'Kasav L'Akra. Sometimes, even though it's true we can learn something from a Kal V'chomer, that's true. But sometimes we're allowed to still express it expressly in a pasuk, even though it's from a Kal V'chomer. Elahacha, but in our case of the Nara, of this girl, this Ama Ivria, she's one person who has two phases, either a Nara or a Bogeres. So you're comparing a case of this girl by the Ama Ivria, who either is a Nara or Bogeres, one person, two phases, or the Toshav and the Sachir, who are two people, two totally different cases. So therefore, those cases are not comparable. So says the Gemara, Kinafka la benarus bebagrus my baile. After all of that, still we're back to our question. If in fact we know that Benaros, the Ama Ivria, goes free, then I just don't need the second case of Bogeres. I don't need it anymore. So says the Gemara, my boy agabe, why do I need that? So Ella, the Gemara suggests one answer. 7 lines from the bottom on Dalet Amud Aleph. Ella Amar Abaye, Lo Nitzercha, the only reason why the Torah went out of its way to Darshan Riyatzachina Min Kasef. The one is talking about a case where she's a Bogeres, and the other is talking about a case where she's a Nara, isn't for a typical case, but rather Ela Lebagar de Islandess. If it's a woman became a Bogeres without the simanim of being a Bogeres, when a woman matures and she has shtei sa'aros, so then she's a Bogeres. What if a woman matures to Bogeres without shtei sa'aros? So that's what the Gemara is trying to say. Salka daita chamina. I might have thought that the Narus tepuk, as a younger girl, she should have been let go as Nama Ivria, but bebagros lo tepuk, that without shtei sa'aros, we would have thought if she made it to Bagros without being freed, maybe because there's no shtei sa'aros, she shouldn't go free. Kamash malan, that she still goes free. And now the Gemara is giving a chiddush to case. That's what Abai is coming to say, that you're right. In a classical case, we don't need the Torah to say the case of Naras and Bagros. What if the Ama Ivri is going to go free by Naras Pashat, she's going to go free by Bagros. But here we're talking about an Ukimta, or we're talking about a Bagar islandess, that she's not able to have children. She didn't physically mature. Her body just won't mature. She's stunted. So that's why the Gemara said we needed that case. The Gemara does not.
Why didn't they spell out that it's an islandess then?
I mean, that's the problem is that you're saying the drasha said it said v'yatzah be Bogeres islandess. Fair question. Fair question. Although many times we have Tanaim that are super cryptic and the Gemara has to clarify. We see this all the time. Just lo shanu ela this. They qualify the Tanaim all the time. Bad answer to a good question, but it's conceptually true. I don't have a really good answer for you. But then the Gemara says that Mar Bar Avashi has a problem with the answer of Abaye. 5 lines from the bottom, last of the short lines. Maskiv lo Mar Bar Avashi. I don't understand. B'lav kal v'chomerhu. This should be a kal v'chomer, this piece of information about Bagros. After all, umasi monin she'ein motzin mirshus sa'av, motzin mirshus adon. By a regular daughter, when she has simanim, she has shtei se'aros, she doesn't stop being the daughter of the father. She's not free. And says the Gemara, but by Rishus Adon, when she becomes a Bogeres, she does go free if she were to be an Ama Ivria. And Bagrus, when she's older, Shemotzia Mirishus Ad, when she does go free, then Eino Den Shemotzia Mirishus Adon. Beautiful argument. Says the Gemara, we don't need this drasha at all. We should know from a Kal V'chomer that this case should be true. So says the Gemara, therefore we don't like the answer of Abaye, and the person who asked the question, which is Mar Bar Avashi, gives his own answer. Mar Bar Avashi, lo nitzurcha ela leikar zvina de islandess. We're talking about the sale of the islandess who is an Ama Ivria. Sal kadaita chamina de asya simane naros havizvina. We might have thought that if she were to have been a Bogeres and she was being sold, that if there were simane naros havizvina, then her sale as an Ama Ivria would count. But the lo asya simane naros, but without that, lo havazvina zvina, that her sale wouldn't in fact be complete. Kamash Malan that that's not true, and this is why we need the pasuk v'yatzachina. In other words, the pasuk is talking about a case about the sale of an Amma Ivriya, and the Gemara says that the sale would still be valid without the pasuk. I might have thought differently, but with the sale would be valid in regards to the Bogeres. The Gemara asks a side question against Mar Baravashi's answer. Well, Mar Baravashi the Amar Valav Kal V'chomer, who, according to Mar Baravashi, who argued against Abaye and said, I know that a Bogeres is the case from a Kal V'chomer. Why don't we use the following arguments against his argument? Amrinan, we already said, Milsa de Asi Kal V'chomer, Tarach V'Kasav Lakra, that there are times in halacha that we have a Kal V'chomer, and the Torah will still explicitly tell us what the drasha is. So let it be that your Kal V'chomer is correct, Mar Baravashi. I don't care. The pasuk can still be explicit exactly about what we want, because Milsa de Asi Kal V'chomer, Tarach V'Kasav Lakra. So it says the Gemara, Hani mili hecha deleka lishnuye. That's true when those words can't be used for something else. Because we're able to use these words elsewhere, we have another drasha that we can make, mishanina. And therefore, in this case, Mar Baravashi's because Mar Baravashi's Kal V'chomer isn't one that, because Mar Baravashi's Kal V'chomer has things that can be learned, because the pasuk can be darshaned, therefore Mar Baravashi's Kal V'chomer is valid and rejects Abaye's opinion. Now, we had already learned yesterday, and we did a chazorah today, that the reason we know that a father gets the Kiddushin of his daughter is because of Yatzachina. Says the Gemara, the Tana Maisi La Mehacha. There are some Tanaim who learn a little bit differently. Take a look at Rashi on the second line of the page. Rashi says, V'Tana Maisi La Mehacha Kiddushay Kesef Delay the Yalif Lahu Rabbi Yehuda Le'el Mein Kesef, that he learns over there from Yatzachina Mein Kesef Nafke Le Tana Mikicha Mistei Ephron. We have a different drasha in regards to how we know that the money goes to the father, how we know that the Kiddushin works bichlal with kesef, and says the Gemara 5-6 lines down on Dalet Amud Beis as follows, going to the last word on the page. Saved me from printing one more page. It was perfect. So says the Gemara, the Tanya, how do we know this is true? Because ki yikach ish isha uve'ala, if a man marries a woman and they have tashmish amita, so says the Gemara, that they can get divorced. But the Gemara is now analyzing, what does it mean? Ki yikach, says the Gemara, ein kicha ela bekesef. We know that kesef works, it functions as a kinyan. It says the Gemara, B'cheinu Omer, Lasati HaKesef HaSodeh Kach Mimeni, by Ephron. So we see that Kicha is an excellent form of Kinyan, because Kicha by Stay Ephron brought back to Ki Kach, and we see that Kicha is a language of Kinyan. The Halo Dinu says the Gemara, wait 1 second, I should logically be able to deduce this. How so? Quarter of the way down. An Amma Ivriya, when she's being sold, she'ena niknes b'bia, niknes b'kesef. An Amma Ivriya is not contracted through tashmish amita; she's contracted through kesef. Zu, but a regular woman should niknes b'bia, where our Mishnah tells us that she could be kona with bia. Eino din shetikne b'kesef, and therefore the Gemara says, why do I need a pasuk at all? I have my kal v'chomer. Says the Gemara, no, your Kal V'chomer has a flaw. Yavama tochiach. I'll show you that a Yavama makes this Kal V'chomer shver. How so? Yavama tochiach sheniknes bebia ve'ena niknes bekesef. We have a case where she is niknes bebia. In fact, that's the primary way that a Yavam and a Yavama create their bond is with tashmish amita, but she cannot be paid. Not midoraisa. Midarabanan, she can have maimar is a din derabanan, Kiddushin derabanan of a. That's possible, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about doraisa. So that's why the Gemara says that the Yavama ruins it. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. Mali Yavama shekin ein niknes b'shtar, tomar bezusha niknes b'shtar. The Gemara pushes back and says, wait, it's maybe not so bad. Maybe Yavama is totally not shaykh to this because there's no shtar. Says Gemara, Tamalomar. Therefore, you have the pasuk of ki kach ish. But if you follow the Shakla V'Tarya, we brought a Kal V'chomer. We asked a question from Yavam and we solved, which means that the Kal V'chomer should still work. So we had a Kal V'chomer, problem and solution, which means that the Kal V'chomer should work. So why'd you just bring a pasuk? Says the Gemara, Halam Alikra. I don't understand. Ha'asyala. You just proved it. You brought me a Kal V'chomer, you asked me a kasha, and you solved the problem. Problem is solved. All is fine and good. Amar Ravashi, don't worry. Really, the kasha and the Kal V'chomer was on something else. Where is it that we have a kasha on this Kal V'chomer? From the case of Amma Ivriya. What is the problem? Male amo ivriya shekain yotza bekesef. An amo ivriya, she can get out of her amo ivriya status with money. So says the Gemara, Tomar bezu she'ena yotza bekesef, that you can't get divorced with money. That's not how divorce works. We said in our Mishnah, v'kona atzba b'shtei drachim, which is death and divorce. That's it. Only way to get out. You can't pay your way out of divorce. Talmud Lomar, therefore, says the Gemara, ki yikach ish. Because of this pircha, we needed the question. We needed the pasuk itself. You're right. The previous kal v'chomer that we tried to learn kesef from was very reasonable. There's nothing wrong with that kal v'chomer. But what we're dealing with over here is a primary issue from Amma Ivriya. And because Amma Ivriya wasn't solved, we therefore were able to use the pasuk to learn the din ki yikach ish. That's the kal v'chomer kicha kicha misnei Ephron, that the kinyan of kesef works. And says the Gemara, v'yitzrach lemichtav v'yatzachinam v'yitzrach lemichtav ki yikach. We actually need both Mari Mekomos. Remember, we had two Tanaim. The Tana we started with today said we learned about kesef from yatzachinam and kasef. And here today, the second Tana says ki yikach ishisha. It says the Gemara, basically we need both of them. And now let's figure out why. Very important lumdas for the halachic components of marriage. I love that we're talking about this tonight because this just happened 40 minutes ago. I mean, we are learning Kiddushin, granted, but we're in like the nitty gritties of how Kiddushin is actually chal. And this is Kiddushin kesef, right? This is what just happened. Harad mekudesh b'tabas mekudesh Moshe b'Yisrael. So the Gemara says, I need two psukim to prove this. Why? Because says the Gemara, v'tzach l'michtav, both of them. Why? Hava amin de'ikasav rachmana ki yikach. If I only would have had kicha mistei Ephron, so then hava amin Kiddushin de yahav la bal didahu. I might have thought that the husband's money that he gives in Kiddushin belongs to the wife, which is not correct. Remember, kicha just means that a kinyan can take place. Where does the money go after she gets it? Doesn't say. That was only learned in the second pasuk. Therefore, Kasav Rachman of Yatzachinam, to teach us that when she gets the Kiddushay Kesef, she's married, but the money belongs to her father and not to her. Mr. Malkin's $50 richer tonight. That's exactly right. But Vi Kasav Rachman of Yatzachinam, had it been that we only had the other pasuk, then Hava Mina, that Hecha Diyava Le Ihi Lidide, the Kiddashto Have Kiddushay, we might have thought that if she would have given him a Kiddushin, that they would have been married. Kasav Rachman, no. Only ki yikach below ki sikach. And in fact, Rav Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva about this. He doesn't allow for chuppahs with double ring ceremonies. Because if she's giving him a ring like he's giving her a ring, then in their minds, those rings are the same. And they are not equal. There's no kiddushin. It's not ki yikach isha leish. It's ki yikach ish isha. There's no two ways about it. So when I've been Masada Kiddushin a number of times, avoid it like the plague. I have a couple of rules. Number one, prenuptial. Number two, no double ring ceremony. You can't do that because it like is mafkia the kiddushin minei ubei, because you think that his ring to you is the same as your. It's not correct. And based on this Gemara, Rav Moshe has a tshuva that we don't do double ring ceremonies because we don't paskin this way.
So if you go to a wedding that has a double ring ceremony?
Going to a wedding is a totally separate discussion. The chalos of the wedding is a halachic issue, but we also assume that ein adam oseh be'ilaso bi'laznus. We assume that when a couple is together the night that they get married, that there's like a mindset of kiddushin. We're finally married. We're consummating our marriage. And therefore they're married. That's why in secular courts, we still need a couple to get a divorce halachically. Otherwise, you have serious mamzer. We have serious mamzer rishaylos. Secular couple gets married, they have L'Shem Kiddushin, Jews. And then they get a secular divorce. She remarries and has 5 kids. Bad. So that's why it's a big problem. Okay. Says the Gemara, next sugya. We learned in our Mishnah that a woman can be niknes bibia, that if there is a tashma shamita l'shem kiddushin, we just discussed this as well as a parenthesis that it works. Where is that from? That's from this pasuk, uve Allah. That was our pasuk that we just learned a few lines ago. The pasuk reads, ki yikach ish isha uve Allah. If a man marries a woman and they have tashma shamita, says the Gemara, 12 lines from the bottom, elamed she niknes bibia. We see from the word uve Allah that actually counts to make a kinyan in marriage. Says the Gemara, well, I don't even need that pasuk. You can leave out the word uve Allah, and I'll know she's still married because v'halo dinu. I have a logic to teach us that. Uma yavama she'ein niknes bekesef niknes bebia. Just like a yavama who cannot be purchased in marriage, no kinyanim, but she is niknes bebia. Then that which we already proved, zu, this regular woman, not a yavama, she'niknes bekesef, eino din she'niknes bebia. Says the Gemara, that kal v'chomer is not a good kal v'chomer. Here's the problem with the kal v'chomer. Says the Gemara, ama ivriya tochiach sheniknes bekesef ve'ein niknes bebia. We see by an Amma Ivriya that she can be purchased with money and cannot be niknes with Tashmish Amita. So therefore, your model has been ruined. Says the Gemara, not true. Mala Amma Ha'ivriya she'ein kinina l'shum ishus, but you can't ask anything from an Amma Ha'ivriya because an Amma Ha'ivriya isn't talking about marriage. You're totally talking about the wrong topic. Apples and oranges. Tomar Bezu with a regular woman who is getting married, she'kinina l'shum ishus. You can't even compare the two. So what do we have? Kal v'chomer, problem solution. And what does the Gemara do? Talmud lomar uve'ala. But why did you just quote a pasuk? The Kal v'chomer is excellent. Remember, we asked. We had a Kal v'chomer. We asked a question from Amma Ivriya and said you can't ask from Amma Ivriya, which means the Kal v'chomer is valid. And then you said Talmud lomar uve'ala. Same exact model. V'lama likra. You literally just gave me an excellent Kal v'chomer. Ayivakash from Amma Ivriya. We solved. We're good. Now we know that you can be niknes b'biyah even without a pasuk. Says the Gemara, the reason why we need that is, let me finish the question. You already gave me this Kal v'chomer that works beautifully. So says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom, heading to the end of the day, heading to the end of the page. Same model as before. You're right. You're right. The Kal v'chomer you just presented, that we should learn from logic by Yavama, that there should be a kinyan called niknes b'biyah. You're 100% correct from that Kal v'chomer. But there's another problem that we didn't surface yet. What's the problem? What's the problem? Miyavama. Here's the problem that we were concerned about. Ad kedei kach, that the Torah had to write the word ve'alah to teach us that a woman can be niknes b'biyah. Mali yavama shekein zekuka ve'omedes. The problem is that you can't make your Kal v'chomer from Yavama at all. Yavama is much different than a regular woman, even though they're going to end in marriage. Why? Yes, because of Zika. Because of Yavama, shekein zekuka ve'omedes. When Ruvain dies and Rachel has no children, the second he stops breathing, she's tied and connected to Shimon. Instantly, she's zekuka ve'omedes. Tomar bezu by a regular woman, she'ein zekuka ve'omedes. You're going to try and bring these marriages are completely different. You can't argue about kesef and be totally different marriages, totally different. So therefore, says the Gemara, Talmud lomar uve'ala. The reason why we needed the pasuk uve'ala to teach us this din is because you can't learn anything from Yavama. Kal v'chomer has been uprooted. We'll stop right here. Pick up tomorrow morning with Daf Hey. Wishing you all a beautiful night.